and welcome to Gov Geeks Assemble. Level up your 9 to 5 on 95. I'm Javier.
And I'm Karen.
And together we are the Gov Geeks.
All right, we got it in sync this time.
We did it. It's a good partnership. I love that. Well, we have a very great show for you guys today. So we have a very solid subject matter expert that's going to join us.
Yeah, she's a high five enthusiast.
Which is always good.
Yes. So Jaime-Lee Marks is here. She is senior analyst from the Office of Native American Affairs Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. How awesome is that?
Super awesome. I mean, just looking like at her LinkedIn profile, she is just like a solid rock star.
Yes.
A solid public servant. Well, okay. Without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Jaime-Lee. Jaime-Lee, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is my first time being on a government related program, so I'm really excited and also nervous.
No reason to be nervous at all. We're nice people.
We don't bite.
Yeah, gosh. So looking at a little bit from, again, your bio here, I love some of the ideas that you've got written here. For instance, I help teams translate human-centered insights into solutions for improving people's experience of public policies, programs, and systems.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
I mean, she is a writer, right? You have to be a writer.
Yeah, I mean, as much as any, lapsed academic in government can be a writer, I suppose I do really enjoy writing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, so the title that we have is Senior Analyst, Office of Native American Affairs, Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, please tell us a little bit about like what really excites you about what that role is.
Sure. So just to, go back to my LinkedIn profile, and really it's meant to boost the awareness of how important anthropologists can be in general to federal service. So I feel like I'd be giving them a disservice if I didn't start there and kind of circle back to your other question. But, the first time I remember my first job in government was at Department of Transportation at the Federal Transit Administration's Office of Research, Demonstration and Innovation. Love them. Great team. And someone asked me, what do we need an anthropologist for? And I remember thinking, like, who do you think rides buses? Like, I don't know. What do you mean? Why do you need people experts when you're serving people? So to me, this idea of navigating my federal career for myself, but also creating that awareness of the value it can bring to an agency and to a team to have somebody who is trained to implement insights from the people we serve to making what we do work for them. So that's like my other big passion, right? So beyond just kind of talking about what I do in my job, getting together with the community of like government anthropologists and thinking about what we do together is something that's really important to me. So thanks for noticing that. And I get excited about that. My job right now, so throughout the course of my career as an anthropologist, I've had the unique opportunity to work with Indigenous communities. So before being a federal servant, I worked in Peru, both on transportation reform projects and on migration and identity questions. So this kind of question of, okay, more people are migrating to Peru, mostly to see some kind of imagine, what are the Andes? What is Andean Peru? What do I want to see here? How is that impacting people's consideration internally in the country of what it means to be Indigenous, especially folks that live in urban cities and try to maintain those relationships across space? I've also gotten to work with tribes in the United States on federal acknowledgement cases. And so I'm like already speaking too much about this, I guess. But when I was in Peru, I thought to myself that anthropology, one of the dark parts of our history, as you probably know, is we were used in colonial projects to say, how can we make this community we're trying to colonize adapt to what we're trying to do, right? And there was this gnawing sense for me that I really need to think about how colonialism works where I'm from, the country that I live in, and what I can do as a good steward of a good citizen, really, to be a part of positive change and making sure that I love that you say, do what we're supposed to do as the government, US government, to support Indigenous communities. So I've been really lucky to be able to do that. And right now I'm currently getting to work on that in the Office of Native American Affairs at the Advisory Council, which, as all of you Gov folks listening probably know us for, we are the Section 106 agency, right? That's what we do, is we help advise agencies in complying with Section 106 of the NHPA, of course, the National Historic Preservation Act. And there's a lot more I could say about that, but I've said a lot in one go, so I'll stop there.
I love it though. I love it though, especially when you're talking about, why wouldn't you want an anthropologist when you're serving people? You're serving, the public. It's like, oh, that's so true. Like, of course, it's just like
It
an
makes
aha
total
moment.
sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If the whole intent is helping to serve the public, well, if you had a subject matter expert that knows what the public's needs are and who the public is, yeah,
Mhm.
that's super important.
Yes. And I have to say, shout out to the NASA anthropologists working on human habitats in space. There are all these anthropologists out there that folks don't even know about doing amazing stuff. And did you know that the VA is the #1 hirer right now of anthropologists in government? So if any of you anthropologists are listening, there's work out there for you and it's really interesting and cool.
See that?
That's super
awesome.
cool. Yeah, I'm blown away. It's amazing just the scope of work that happens in public service, because we benefit so much from so many things that people never even knew was there. I mean, there's so many values that are being generated, and here you are, a subject matter expert, helping ensure that people are actually getting these values, but we never even know that, wonderful people are working behind the scenes to make all this stuff happen.
Right, which that seems to be the nature of government, right?
Of course.
Seamlessly, behind the scenes getting it done. But it's so wonderful to share that there are those opportunities out there for fellow anthropologists who could be, going through their, schooling and trying to figure out what can I do after this? And
Right.
you can do all of this great stuff.
Yeah, how can I find fulfillment in my career? What are the things that I could really kind of have passion around? And clearly, I mean, Jaime-Lee, from you describing like the work that you do, there really is a lot of passion there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really challenging to work with Indigenous nations and communities and not come away
Right.
from that unchanged and passionate. So I just want to credit every single individual and community that is consented to work with me over the years to figure out some problems together. It's definitely been life-changing for me. And I think that, we have a government that to varying degrees over time is trying to navigate our past and try to do right by Indigenous nations, and being a part of that or trying to be a part of that effort has been really gratifying for me.
Well, the website also, you shared a couple of links. This first one, Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, I believe the homepage. There's a lot of quick links and information that's here. I'm curious, I know you mentioned Section 106 earlier, but is there any area in particular that is like just something that you wanted to bring to everyone's attention?
Sure. One thing that's a really exciting initiative, an all of government initiative really, but one that we are involved in the Office of Native American Affairs, is thinking through how does Indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge, how is it a crucial part of the Section 106 process, right? So we're talking about the identification of historic properties, identification of possible effects of federal projects and permits on historic properties, assessing those effects and mitigating those effects, et cetera. So all stages of the Section 106 process, how Indigenous or traditional knowledge can be thought of as special expertise. So I sent y'all, and hopefully it makes the show notes, an information paper from us that starts to work with some of these ideas, but the whole of government is trying to think through how to better institutionalize respect for Indigenous knowledge in our decision-making and also our hiring practices. And that's a very exciting initiative that folks should know is going on.
That is beautiful. And so, as you're expressing so much of the work that you do, and really the tone and the passion is definitely there, I'm curious, like, who for you, for what was very influential in your career? Because a lot of times people are trying to find, again, fulfillment in the career and what they're doing and the work that they have and everything. Who for you was very helpful?
Man, when I read that question, I felt really overwhelmed because I wouldn't even know where to start. I feel like so many of us in federal service come to it excited and realize quickly, with the energy that you were just using to discuss it a minute ago, how many amazing, driven, smart people are out there trying to work on these big issues. I would say first and foremost, working with Native representatives and nations has influenced my work. I also would say that the time I've spent with my Indigenous colleagues, I myself am not a tribal member, and I put that right out front, but, trying to address the devastating impacts of settler colonialism is a project for all of us. And I really want to be a part of helping federal employees. I'm trying to access the way you guys said it, do what they're supposed to do, right? And have the tools to do what they're supposed to do. So yeah, it's hard. Like I said, it would be spending time with Indigenous colleagues in places of importance to them. It would be difficult to walk away from that unimpacted. They've always been extremely generous with their time, with their expertise, very forthcoming with, sharing. You're not, this conversation is not for you. Here's why. I just feel like over and over again, the kind of emotional energy and labor I've seen folks put into their work, especially when it can be so difficult to approach intellectually and emotionally, has just absolutely blown me away. There are days when I'm feeling tired. And then I think about what it would be like to be working on this as someone who's been working on this my whole life on an issue that impacts my community directly. And I'm like, I'm not tired. I don't even know what being tired is. From there, I would say I've had such great bosses. I don't know if I know that some people have ever had the opposite reality because I've talked to them, but I have just been so lucky. I would say, especially at the National Park Service and at my job now, I've just had bosses that treat me like a full person, that they themselves bring them full selves to work. So I feel like I have the permission to, because so often I feel like we hear leaders tell us to, but then they don't, which doesn't really create that environment. And then, yeah, just especially in the last, how do I want to say this? Especially in the last 5 years, it's been fascinating to watch leaders strike that balance between being as transparent with their employees and team as they want to be, while maintaining that high level of professionalism. And I've just had bosses that have done that beautifully. So I'm forever grateful for them for kind of showing me how it's done. And I can only aspire to walking the line the way they have.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you have that influence, that has kind of paved your way, and working with your Indigenous colleagues that has kind of given you that perspective. So thank you for sharing that. And I know, we have good bosses. We have maybe other bosses that we learn some other things from, like maybe how we don't want to be a leader. But I guess from your experience, have you had, a very impactful lesson in your career? Like, what was the hardest one career lesson that you can share?
Yeah, I'm going to be vulnerable and share as much as I can about this one, because there are certain lessons that happen in life that when they happen, I will post them as vaguely as I can to my friends on Facebook so that they show up in my memory, so that I can continue to be reminded to learn from them. And I know that, social media is one thing, but even just doing that on your own, keeping kind of a list or a document could be really helpful. But for me, I would say I learned a really big lesson that sustainable change doesn't just come through values and what you say, it comes through values and action. And I know, like, hearing that, it's like a duh, I've always known that, but I had a situation come up where what was being said about values in a project and what was being done weren't necessarily the same. And this wasn't a whistleblower situation. It wasn't a someone's breaking the law. It wasn't a, report anyone to anyone situation. It was simply, I know that more could be done to do what we said we wanted to do. It would just take someone getting off their butts and do it. And so I remember I spent I'm me, so I can be a little annoying. So like a month beforehand, I said, hey, I see this plan. I don't really see this in it. 3 weeks, hey, da, 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 da. And this is the lesson I learned. All of that was wasted time. When it got down to the point where what was not being done was creating a bad result, I ended up just going to do the thing I kept asking for permission to do. And so I think sometimes it's against my nature to not follow protocol and to not ask for permission and not get top cover. But in that situation, I just got a little scrappy and I got out there and I did what needed to do. And it wasn't until the impact and the data was so significantly different for the situation, I just cried. I cried. I don't think I've ever cried that hard, because I was just so relieved. And also so like, why didn't I just start doing this? And then share it with folks, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do unless someone stops me. So like, I'm not saying always do that in a federal space, because certainly protocols are important, but sometimes, yeah. And I still use that in my work. If something needs to happen, it's better to do it. Say, hey, I made this, want to use it, if you want people to use it sometimes.
Say that's an amazing example.
That definitely is. Well, and then having the skill set and the expertise to be able to do something like that. And it's interesting because sometimes as we're asking another person to do something or for it to be included in another area, they aren't the right people to be doing it. And they may not have the right skills, background, profession, et cetera, to be able to do it. And it sounds like you took something and executed it in a way that few people could have done.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like it was just the will to, I was in this situation. I do feel like it was the will to do it, but that goes a long way. And also to your point, which I think is such a good one, we've got such a great network of people in federal government. You can always phone a friend. So in that moment when I was phoning people up my ladder to say, hey, can I, mom, can I, whatever, I could have been phoning friends like, hey, have you ever been in a situation where this needs to happen and no one will respond to you? What did you do? Right. So being able to have these conversations when you're feeling stuck is really important.
Well, I mean, I think that's why it's important. And we appreciate you being vulnerable and talking about that with us and sharing it with the Gov Geekdom on this topic, because I think a lot of times people experience something similar, and without that type of influence or knowledge or perspective, they may do a different action than you had done. But now perhaps there's a person that's listening or watching this that may think differently and be like, I want to be like Jaime-Lee. She was able to do it, and look at all this great stuff that happened. Such a role model.
Right. It's almost like paving a way for somebody, right? Like, kind of the whole reason we started the Gov Geeks was we struggled through, well, we knew we wanted to be in public service, but how do we get there? How do we do it?
Absolutely.
And realizing that, okay, we figured out some things, we've learned some things, let's share that. And I think that's kind of like with you, by sharing your experience with everybody here, it's just showing people that, I've gone through something like that too. This is how I handled it. You may not want to handle it exactly like I did, but this is the process you go through. And, don't be afraid to ask somebody, to ask for help or anything like that. So I think it's a matter of that communication and that being vulnerable and just being open to experiences, and sometimes taking that initiative when it's, it could be scary, but look at what you accomplished with it. So I think it's just,
no one got mad at me. Everybody took credit for what I did. They're like, look at this. And I was like, why did I spend 3 weeks spinning my wheels when I could have been spending 3 weeks doing the work? It was a really big moment for me.
And then at the end of the day, everyone benefits.
Yeah.
The public that the agency is serving. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The leadership who's able to look that much better. That you did the right thing for the right reasons. All of the above, it's amazing. I think sometimes, like when we're thinking about the concept of what this show is and what the podcast is in general, it's important for us to really celebrate the successes of not just public service in general, but public servants that make public service work.
Yeah.
My dog, sorry.
Oh, we like dogs.
Do you want to sing to the dog?
I know, right? Maybe I should.
We sing to him all the time.
Yeah, they're so cute. They just get nice and little cuddly. Anyhow, I'm going to get emotional. So I'm curious, along those notes in terms of empowering others a bit, well, what for you would you feel is the best advice to share with others to find a fulfilling career in public service rather than just, keeping a job?
Yeah, that's a good question. First and foremost, stay connected however you can to the communities you serve. And I know that can be really nebulous to think about. For one thing, I had one position where the folks that I served were more technical experts in an area than they were these, the communities that I wanted to most benefit from what they did. And it took me a minute to kind of click in my brain that by working with these technical experts, we are helping to build these amazing things, right? And I needed that. I was young in my career and I kind of needed more perspective on how all the pieces fit together. And I'll come back to that in a second, but I do just want to say one thing that I think every federal employee looking for that deeper kind of meaning or connection to, like, why am I a public servant? The United States government, I need to mention, has a trust responsibility to federally recognized tribes. And so it is all of our responsibility to know about that, to, get our agencies or get on board with federal consultation laws and policies, including 106 and NEPA and all of that, but actually just the government to government consultation. So if you're hearing me say, oh, get connected to communities, not to be me and just continue to repeat things that are important to me about this, but we all have responsibilities to respect the government to government relationship with tribes. And there is always a way to do that from wherever you are. And I would love to talk to anyone about it. If they're like, hey, I do this, it seems really far removed. I promise you, I can talk to you and we can pull you into doing the good work to help get out of the way of Native nations and the awesome work that they want to do. From there, I think that this question of fulfillment is a lifelong question for the self, right? And I think in our culture, sometimes we separate the self from work, and that's just not how, unless you're in an Apple TV show, I guess, that I haven't watched but need to, that's not how it works. And so if you're feeling like I sometimes do, overwhelmed with tasks, and you feel like, why am I deep in the space for yourself? Get to know what for yourself reconnects you to that mission and do it. For me, it's writing or reading. Sometimes I really like taking a break and going to a museum to inspire myself. Okay, why did I spend half of my day taking a 300-page document and pulling out the 4 pieces of actually crucial information applicants need to know so that they can actually navigate this thing? Because I'm getting paid to do this stuff, and some of our applicants obviously aren't. I get connected to the bigger picture. What's going on in my agency? How does my agency fit into government? Who are we serving? Why? And it really does help me feel fulfilled. I would say 9 days out of 10, but on that 10th day, I know what to do for myself to get back.
That is inspiring. I mean, I personally, I love museums. I love reconnecting with everything that's here in DC that we could find. It's just a physical representation of what is important in our nation and why we're doing what we're doing as public servants. And it's amazing because there are so many different facets that are there and that need service, that need protecting, that need attention. And government and public servants by extension are, ever present in doing so much stuff, even though there's not a knowledge base about it, not recognition and everything that's there, but it's important work that's done because it's important. That's very encouraging.
Yeah, the good work worth doing.
Yeah, work worth doing. Absolutely. So in terms of that concept, if we're thinking about engagement of individuals and how we recharge ourselves, I'm curious for organizations and government agencies, what would you think is key to helping to build employee morale?
Yeah. Now, this I have seen to be a problem sometimes. I haven't had a problem, internally to teams having a boss I didn't feel was like an amazing or best boss. I've been, again, very lucky, but witnessing folks in situations where they are in that dip moment and not sure necessarily how to get out of it and feel reinvigorated, I have definitely witnessed that. For me, the bigger picture connection is crucial. And the question for managers and for everybody involved in teams really is, how do you bring the bigger picture into the everyday, whether that's through feedback, whether that's through, hey, you did this and it allowed me to do that. I remember I worked at a program very near and dear to my heart, and whether or not we were able to get a tribal program $60,000 a year all relied on this one, of course, like document tracking signature system, right? And the person that worked that system had a million requests all day long, right? And I always made a point to be like, because you did this, and it was no doubt not fun, at least some of the time, right? Chasing people down for signatures, we just made sure that this nation will be eligible for this amount of money on a continuing basis from now, like connecting people to the bigger picture. And to me, that has to start at day one. I know I can't think of a time I've started a job and haven't remembered my first day. And I think we forget that. I have started a lot of jobs that don't act like the first day is a big day. And it is a big day. It's your first opportunity to connect your hire into the bigger picture. And keep that up along the way. And I know in the virtual context that can be harder because you're not just like, hey, shadow me, let's go to all these awesome meetings, pulling up a chair to the big table because you're the special new hire. Like, I super miss all of that. But we have found a way on several teams I've been on to make these workbooks that walk people through a set of questions and pairs them with a coffee mentor and really helps to connect them across teams for the first 2 weeks of their new jobs to try to get that connection into the, wow, why am I only thinking in metaphors like lately? Like, jump in the stream with your colleagues and be there with them and see how what you do fits together. You're all fishing here together, and that's, to me, very important to morale.
No, absolutely. I mean, having the opportunity to get people connected with why they're there, with why the agency, why the organization is there. I think that is just a phenomenal thing. And to be honest, to hear your level of enthusiasm and engagement that you have in the work, I mean, how lucky are the people that have the opportunity to work with you? Like if you're thinking about like, what is an ideal supervisor, manager, leader in a government organization, all of the things that you're mentioning are just like hallmark principles of how to build fulfillment, build engagement, build excitement in the work that's being done, and to really enjoy well, what are the actual products and services that are actually provided? Such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, the overall picture. Yeah.
Well,
That's
we
good.
really appreciate having the conversation with you. We know that there's a couple of other sites that you shared with us that I want to make sure that we call attention to. So it looks like, of course, that there's also a Facebook page as well. How cool is that, that ACHP has a Facebook page as well? And then, of course, there's more in terms of like YouTube videos and
Nice.
everything as well. So you guys are like really connected. You have a really good means of really,
presence.
yeah, good presence being available for people.
Our outreach and communications team is top notch. One thing that you're going to find in the historic preservation field is passionate people. And we definitely have that in spades across the organization.
That is super cool.
Very lucky. Yeah.
Well, again, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the show on Gov Geeks Assemble. So a large round of applause for Jaime-Lee. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all as well.
And thank you all also for joining us as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen, to take some notes and ideas from a lot of the great speakers that we have. Hopefully there's a couple of nuggets of information that really stays with you as you continue to pursue your career in government. And know that honestly, your work is appreciated. We value your service. We value the work that you're doing, the impact that you're making on the larger community.
Yeah. And just, Jaime-Lee, thank you for your time and your passion, because I want, people to see how those of us in government are so passionate about what we do. And we just want to share our knowledge and just, without sounding cheesy, try to make the world a better place as much as possible, even if it is, within a certain area. But just thank you for all that you do and for being vulnerable and sharing your stories with us, and just continue the great work.
Sure. Thank y'all for having me.